Kendrick Perkins revealed a startling truth. Stephen A. Smith secretly tried to have him fired from ESPN. This exposure reveals a side of Smith that could change public perception. It all stems from a phone call Perkins can't forget. That call exposed Smith's true character behind the cameras. Most viewers were unaware of what happened off-air. The man who smiled at Perkins daily on First Take was simultaneously plotting to have him removed from the network, and he was dangerously close to succeeding. A private discussion with an ESPN executive changed everything. It was a secret conversation that revealed the entire scheme. This story is more than a simple disagreement between two analysts. It's about influence, power, and asserting control. This is what happens when a top voice decides there is no more room at the table. This conflict didn't begin in 2026. Its roots go back years, to Perkins' early post-NBA career. In 2019, Perkins started at ESPN and things seemed positive. He was driven and committed. He arrived each day determined to prove his value on television. But an obstacle stood in his way, and it had a name. When Perkins began, he wasn't earning a star's salary. His day rate contract paid about $2,500 an appearance with a monthly cap. So, while he appeared to be a regular on First Take, his actual status was far more precarious. He was used as needed and paid just enough to make it worthwhile. Here, the story takes a turn involving Stephen A. Smith. Around 2020 or early 2021, during the NBA playoffs, Stephen A. Smith, already ESPN's highest paid star, wanted Perkins on First Take for an entire week. When Smith requested this from management, something unexpected happened. They rejected him. ESPN denied the request from its future $100 million man. Perkins' contract limitations prevented a full week's appearance. The network's bureaucracy wouldn't make an exception. But Smith refused to accept that. He took matters into his own hands. He made a move that led many to believe he was Perkins' ally. Smith contacted the executives himself. He insisted they resolve the contract issue immediately. Smith later told Perkins, "Expect a call from the bosses." The following day, ESPN presented Perkins with an unbelievable offer. They scrapped his old contract, which had a year remaining. In its place was a new 3-year agreement for roughly $700,000 annually. In an instant, Kendrick Perkins' career was transformed. He went from a day rate analyst to a full-time employee earning nearly $750,000 a year. And it appeared Stephen A. Smith was the one who made it happen. If this is your first time hearing this, you're likely thinking what everyone else did. It seemed like a favor between friends. It appeared Smith used his power for good, a belief Perkins initially shared. But Perkins later discovered Smith's motives weren't so pure. According to Perkins' later revelations, the contract wasn't friendship. It was a chess move. And he was a pawn. In 2020, Smith was already negotiating his own massive ESPN deal. He was angling for creative control of First Take. He wanted to handpick his on-air opponent. Kendrick Perkins was a passionate, if sometimes raw, former player. Smith saw him as the ideal foil he could always defeat in debate. The contract wasn't about Perkins' family or his talent. It was about securing a sparring partner Smith could manage. Perkins' entire ESPN career hinged on Smith's recommendation. This meant Perkins owed everything to him, a dynamic that lasted for years. Perkins showed up and played his part in the arguments. Smith orchestrated everything from the center of his self-made stage, but then, unexpectedly, Perkins stopped following the script. He began challenging Smith in ways that felt too personal. This time, Smith called executives not to help Perkins, but to remove him. To grasp why Smith turned on Perkins, you must understand their history. Their split wasn't sudden. It was a slow decay over years. A series of on-air fights escalated into deeply personal insults. Each confrontation eroded the professional respect between them. It ignited, like many NBA media stories, over a debate on race. Kendrick Perkins, Stephen A. Smith, and JJ Redick were on set. They were discussing the NBA most valuable player race. That's when Perkins made a statement that nearly detonated the show. He argued there was a racial bias in the most valuable player voting. He pointed to data suggesting a pattern favoring white players. It was a provocative and controversial assertion. Producers knew his statement would cause an internet explosion. It did explode, but not in the way Perkins had imagined. JJ Redick, seated beside him, was not having any of it. What followed became a legendary moment in the show's history. Redick called out the show for fabricating non-existent narratives. And he was only getting started, as this was more than a stats debate. He felt his colleague had leveled an offensive charge against voters. He saw it as an insult to the entire basketball community. Redick stated Perkins was implying that the white voters were racist. The tension was unbearable. Redick's voice trembled with fury. Perkins, however, held his ground and did not retreat. The argument became intensely personal and heated. Redick was so angry he mistakenly called him by the wrong name. It was clear the debate had moved beyond professional discourse. Perkins, feeling cornered, fought back, insisting he only stated facts. I laid out the truth, and you will not just dismiss it. The fallout from that segment was massive. Social media erupted and Reddit threads ignited. In the midst of the chaos, what was Stephen A. Smith doing? According to reports, he was completely silent, allowing Perkins and Redick to battle it out as he merely observed from the sidelines. Eventually, Smith did publicly comment on the situation. Appearing on the Bill Simmons podcast, he admitted that things had spiraled out of control and become uncomfortable. He specifically said, "First of all, it can go too far. Secondly, in that particular show, it did go too far. I thought both of them were wrong to a certain degree. It did get uncomfortable. But for Perkins, that wasn't the main issue. The heated nature of the debate didn't bother him. He'd spent his life in high-pressure environments. After more than a decade in the NBA, he had earned a championship with the Boston Celtics. Having battled the world's best in intense playoff games, a heated television debate was hardly intimidating. What truly bothered Perkins was what occurred after the broadcast ended. Stephen A. Smith didn't offer any private support or even call to check on him later that evening. Instead, Smith allegedly used the explosive JJ Redick incident behind the scenes, framing it as proof that Perkins was an unreliable loose cannon who posed a public relations risk to the network on live TV. And this allegedly was not an isolated incident of Smith using an on-air exchange against Perkins privately. As their clashes continued, the same pattern emerged. On camera, Perkins and Smith would argue over topics like the LeBron versus Jordan debate, or MVP selections, or whether the Eastern or Western Conference was receiving adequate recognition. Then, once the segment concluded, Smith would reportedly go to network executives and portray Perkins as the problem. For example, during the Christmas Day scheduled debate in August of 2025, the NBA's lineup was heavily skewed toward Western Conference games. Out of 5 games, 4 featured Western teams, with only the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the New York Knicks representing the East. Stephen A. Smith viewed this as a slight to the Eastern Conference. However, Perkins went on a podcast and systematically dismantled Smith's entire argument with a simple and direct position. He pointed out that the Western Conference boasted all the major stars: Anthony Edwards, Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, and Cooper Flagg. He argued the NBA was making a smart financial decision by showcasing its top talent on its most prominent platform, especially given the direct competition for viewers with the NFL on Christmas Day. Perkins was blunt. He declared, "This league still belongs to the OGs. KD, Steph, Bron. Who's playing on opening night? KD, Steph, Bron, and the champs. And who's playing on Christmas? KD, Steph, Bron." He elaborated further, providing a detailed breakdown of the competitive environment that made Smith's argument appear weak in contrast. "You have 2 major sports competing on Christmas Day. Football is king," he explained. "To capture the audience you need for basketball, where are your biggest superstars? They're in the Western Conference." While this seemed like a standard disagreement between analysts, a common occurrence in sports media, Perkins alleges that underneath it all, Smith used this moment against him as well. According to Perkins, Smith did not take kindly to being publicly corrected, especially by someone whose position at ESPN was secured thanks to a call Smith himself had made. This all leads to perhaps the most revealing incident, one of Stephen A. Smith's signature on-air rants. This time, it wasn't about a player or a team, it was a viral tirade aimed squarely at Kendrick Perkins himself. On the set of First Take, a visibly incensed Smith attacked Perkins in a manner that felt more personal than professional. From a basketball standpoint, I'm not disagreeing with Perk per se, but he's really annoying me today. And I'm going to tell you why. Notice what Smith focused on. He wasn't refuting Perkins' basketball knowledge or the facts he presented. He said Perkins was annoying him, taking the issue far beyond the realm of sports analysis. Smith framed it as a personal attack on a champion. The Game 7 topic became a direct confrontation. Smith then used Perkins' most vulnerable career moment against him, implying he lacked a champion's perspective. He highlighted Perkins' injury during a decisive Game 7. For Perkins, that jab crossed a professional boundary. The 2010 finals injury was a deep wound. Perkins felt it was a malicious attack, not analysis. The on-air comments were a calculated blow. The subtext was clear. Your opinion is invalid because you weren't there. An attempt to intervene was shut down. Yelling doesn't make an argument factual. The moment went viral, cementing a public narrative. Meanwhile, a different story unfolded privately. Perkins alleges Smith portrayed him as a liability to executives. A March 2025 incident with Charles Barkley highlighted the issue. After Barkley's public insults, Perkins responded fiercely. He took to X, challenging Barkley to a face-to-face confrontation. Smith publicly supported Perkins, acting as a colleague, but Perkins claims it was a facade. While showing public solidarity, Smith's private actions differed. Perkins claims Smith used the feud to warn ESPN about him. He was allegedly painted as a constant source of conflict, and a risk that was no longer worth the reward. Though Perkins and Barkley made peace by June 2025, thanks to a mediated discussion, the fallout at the network was already in motion. The campaign against Perkins had apparently succeeded. A final public controversy was all that was needed. It centered on a gaming app, unrelated to basketball. In November 2025, ESPN ordered talent to sever ties. The network cited a clear conflict of interest. Perkins was incensed, noting Smith had also promoted the app. However, Smith allegedly faced no punishment. To Perkins, the message was clear. Two sets of rules existed. Defying Smith, his original sponsor, was career suicide. The inevitable arrived. By February 2026, his fate seemed sealed. YouTube was rife with rumors of his termination. Claims of another clash with Smith fueled the speculation. Fake social media posts from parody accounts made it seem official. Online sports communities were consumed with the debate. The overwhelming narrative was out of his hands. But this overlooks a core part of Kendrick Perkins. His origins trace back to the 409, Beaumont, Texas. Perkins ran toward the fight. On air, with calm defiance, he sent a shockwave through sports media. He declared he would lose no sleep if fired. The viral statement was more than words. It was a challenge. This wasn't about job security or Boston connections. It was aimed directly at Stephen A. Smith. In corporate language, Perkins was clear. You don't own me. My career isn't yours to end. He asserted his own value, before and after Smith. If backroom deals forced him out, he'd leave with his head high. Social media erupted with both mockery and applause. Yet no one could deny what he had done. He did what few at ESPN dare to. He spoke his truth. And he kept speaking, not just once. He exposed a pattern of manipulation, alleging Smith controlled narratives and careers. Perkins detailed how Smith decided who spoke on First Take and how he'd privately undermine colleagues. He mentioned a stark double standard regarding a gaming app promotion. The contract Smith helped him get in 2020 became a leash. ESPN remained silent, letting the news cycle run its course. But the public record was undeniable. Years of interactions revealed the dynamic. A disturbing picture formed from the pieces. In 2020, Smith secured a $700,000 deal for him. By 2023, Smith used a racial debate as leverage. By 2025, public support masked private betrayal. The pattern was textbook, according to Perkins. Build someone up to create dependency. Then, when they challenge you, tear them down. Not publicly, but with quiet whispers to executives. You plant seeds of doubt with those who control the money. By mid-February 2026, the end seemed near. Media outlets reported his imminent exit. Smith reportedly watched, amused. He treated a man's career like a spectacle. But Smith didn't count on the facts. Perkins was not only staying, but was promoted to NBA Countdown. He miscalculated. Executives wanted Perkins. Not for Smith's sake, but despite him. Here, the irony peaks. While Smith allegedly schemed against him, Smith himself had left NBA Countdown. He publicly stated he was too busy for the show. Smith left, Perkins stayed. The irony is palpable, but Perkins' true power play wasn't public. It wasn't a quote or a post. He simply refused to be Smith's warning to others. The industry is littered with discarded analysts. Those who crossed the wrong powerful figure. Those with the wrong opinion disappeared. They vanish, replaced by the next agreeable voice. Perkins would not be that person. He spoke out, forcing a difficult conversation. A conversation about unchecked power, where one person can dictate careers by phone. The call that gave him $700,000 could also take it. The platform wasn't his fear. The fear was realizing his career rested on a false foundation. Today, Kendrick Perkins is still at ESPN. Firing rumors were proven false. And Smith remains the network's most powerful star. But something changed. A fundamental truth is now public. The audience now sees the reality behind the curtain. This is a truth Smith cannot spin or shout down. Perkins didn't just endure the campaign, he unveiled it. He exposed the industry's hidden truth. Sports television's biggest fights aren't in arenas. They happen in boardrooms and on private calls. So next time you see them debate on screen, ask yourself if it's genuine or just a scripted game. Perkins discovered the answer. And now you have too. Check out more of our content. We appreciate you watching.